Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I'm here today to do a Friday Reads video where I catch up on the week in reading and usually talk about bookish things that have gone on in the world, but January has been quiet for that and I'm going to keep it that way for now. So we're just going to talk about the Friday Reads. I do want to do something quick before we get to the Friday Reads, which is just talk about two things that I've been obsessed with this week. I don't know if this will become a regular feature in Friday Reads, but I thought it would be fun to kind of try it out. Maybe I'll just do it when I have something to talk about. The first thing is that Joel and I have been watching The Pit on Max here in the United States. This is the new medical drama starring Noah Wyle. Noah Wyle making a big return to medical dramas many years after ER went off the air. I was a huge fan of ER in the 90s, and I trailed off at a certain point because it definitely felt like the quality took a big dip over time. And we were excited and curious to see. We like medical dramas because I don't know, it's just some fascinating. And the problem we have with a lot of them is that inevitably the doctors all start sleeping with each other. It becomes more about sex than it is about the medical drama. And there's just a lot of melodrama. And that's not what we're interested in. There was a show called Code Black a couple of years ago that mostly avoided a lot of that stuff, and we really enjoyed it. Joel's just told me yesterday that he still occasionally watches old episodes of it, even though they haven't produced new episodes in years. So we started watching it, and we really like it because it doesn't have any of that like melodrama. It feels like a medical show that is really about the doctors and the patients and all of that. So we have really been enjoying that show. So I wanted to mention it and put it out there. And if you've been watching it, let me know what you have been thinking of it in the comment section down below. The other thing is a song, which is a little bit unusual for me. I listen to music as everybody does, but it's not really my big passion in life. Obviously books and movies, because I'm really into movies and the Academy Awards and all that. But this week, I was sent a reel on Instagram by Kurt Anderson, who is a subscriber, about Jackie Shane, who was a pioneering transgender singer. She moved to Toronto and was a jazz singer and sang with like Etta James. And it's a fascinating story. Where is her biopic? I would love to see it. And in the reel, it mentioned her biggest hit, which is a song called Any Other Way. And I have been playing a YouTube video of that song on a loop all week. And it's really great. So I will put a link to the video of Jackie Shane singing Any Other Way in the description box down below, along with recent videos that I have done, including my big book haul for the month of January and all of that stuff, if you have missed it. Let's get into the actual Friday Reads portion of the video. This may be one of my elusive, shorter Friday Reads videos, because the other thing is it's gotten to be the end of the day. It is 5:15 as I am filming this, and I am ready to be done for the day. It was an unexpectedly hectic week for work, and I'm tired, I'm getting hungry. Joel is sitting with the dogs waiting for dinner, and I'd like to get out there. So I'm going to try to do this all in one take as well, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, point just being, it's the end of the day. I don't know that I have like the patience to spend a lot of time talking about all of these books, but we shall see. I only actually finished one book so far this week, but I will by the end of the day have finished another one. The only book that I finished was Isaac's Song by Daniel Black. If you remember from my last Friday Reads, which will be one of the videos that's linked down below, I was really loving this book a whole lot. You can see Don't Cry For Me by Daniel Black faced out on my bookshelf right there. This is a sequel to that. I mean, sequel is, it makes it sound like you have to read that one before you read this one, and I don't think that's actually true. They are companions, I should say. In Don't Cry For Me, a father is writing letters to his son who has been estranged from him, and he is trying to explain how he became the father that he was and how he became the type of father who could not accept his gay son. And in Isaac's song, you get the son's story, and he does get the letters in this book, and it is so good. I won't spend a whole lot of time talking about this book since I spent a lot of time talking about it in my last Friday Reads, and all of that still holds true. I think the only thing is I had an hour left in the audio of this book when I last spoke to you in a Friday Reads video, and I listened to the last hour. And it did dip for me a little bit because, interestingly, like, no spoilers, but it does suddenly fan out the narrative in a way that felt a little bit disappointing to me. I wanted it to stick much more closely with Isaac and his story and his therapist and all of the things that he had been working on through the course of the book. And instead, it sort of fans out. And in the days since I finished it, I've come to peace with it a little bit because I think it fans out so that this story isn't just a sort of insular thing. It is a much more widespread story about Black families, Black ancestry, Black generational trauma, and all of that. I don't necessarily think it needed to fan out. I think this is something that you probably could have generalized yourself without Daniel Black doing it for you. But I do really appreciate it. And so in the moment I finished the book, I felt a little disappointed. But in the days since, I have come to appreciate what he did and what he was trying to do. I do still wish it had stayed much more closely with Isaac. But again, can't really get into it any more than that because I don't want to really spoil the book. I still think it's fantastic. If you haven't read Don't Cry For Me or this, I would highly recommend it to you, especially if you are looking for great reads for Black History Month, because by the time you watch this video, it will be Black History Month, unless you're watching this at some wild later date in the future. I am talking to you on the last day of January. So that's the only book I have managed to finish this week, and I'll be shocked if it's not among my favorite books for 2025. I have talked about how January is usually a really good month for me. Well, it's not usually a really good month, but I usually find at least one book that ends up being one of my favorites of the year. And this year, I found a couple that feel like they could be there. Obviously, there's Isaac's Song, and I'll talk more about the others when Joel and I film our reading wrap-up for the month of January. The book that I'm very close to finishing, and which I will be done with by the end of the day, by goodness, is Grief is Love by Marissa Renee Lee. This is subtitled Living with Loss. My therapist had recommended this book to me in the past, but then she brought it up again after Joel and I lost our friend, our person, Leon, at the end of December. And maybe when she first recommended it to me, I didn't really feel ready for it, but this time I did. And this took me a surprisingly long time to read because it's only 179 pages or something like that. So it shouldn't have taken that long, but it talks a lot about grief and your response to grief and how you should allow yourself to feel all of the things that go along with it. And it didn't just trigger things that I felt about losing Leon. It also triggered things about losing my dog Guinness, about losing our dog Jameson. And that meant I had a much slower progression through this book than because, it felt heavy, even though I felt recognized and validated in a lot of ways. And it helped me understand things about myself. I just need to want to finish it tonight because there's not that much left in the book. And because if I finish it tonight, it's something I finished in January, and then I don't have to carry it into the month of February. I flagged one passage in here just to show one level at which this book spoke to me, in which if you have struggled with grief, I think this would be a great book for you, or even if you are in the process, because she talks a lot about her mother's death in 2009. And her mother had been ill for a long time. And so it is also, not just is it about grief, it is also about the process of getting ready to lose a person and how you begin to grieve before the actual loss. But anyway, I have been progressively anxious since 2020. I think this book has given me a little bit of perspective on that. I think a lot of my anxiety spike in recent years started because of the pandemic and the stress and trauma that came from a year of wild uncertainty and difficulty. And then the next year, 2021, our dog Guinness got sick. And over the next year, we lost him. We tried to care for him and then ultimately lost him. And then over the year after that, Jameson was sick and we were preparing ourselves to lose her. And then over the last 6 months, Leon was diagnosed with a brain tumor and we began the process of trying to care for her and then losing her. So I had kind of made a connection between all of this and the anxiety getting worse, but this paragraph really hit for me. Living with loss may include times of profound anxiety and depression. Mental illness, suicidal ideation, and thoughts of self-harm are common aspects of the grief experience that no one wants to talk about. Here's where we really go into overdrive. Research has shown that the death of a loved one increases the occurrence of several psychiatric disorders, including major depressive episodes, panic disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. There is also evidence for increased occurrence of manic episodes, phobias, alcohol use disorders, and generalized anxiety disorder in the aftermath of loss. Because we don't talk about this part of grief, you might feel broken or alone when you encounter these types of struggles in your grief journey. We assume something is wrong with us, but this is all, unfortunately, common. So I really felt that made me feel good. A lot of this book was difficult to read because, as I said, it just hit parts of my soul pretty deeply and hard. But I feel good for having read it, and I will hopefully be done with it tonight. And I look forward to talking about this with my therapist the next time we have an appointment, because I think she really hit the nail on the head. This was a perfect book for me to read right now. I started another book on audio. That is Four Squares by Bobby Finger. So I had gotten this copy from the library. And when I got home from the library, Joel saw this. And turns out he had been interested in reading it. So we talked about it and decided, you know what? Because also I have a lot of library books at the moment that I need to work my way through. So we decided, why don't we cash in a credit on Libro? And then I'll read it first, and then he will read it when I'm done. So I have been listening to this on audio. I have not made a lot of progress, again, because it feels like work was just unexpectedly hectic. So I did not have a lot of time to listen during the day, whereas other weeks I will frequently have periods of the day where I'm doing kind of mindless tasks, like in spreadsheets and things like that. And I can listen to an audiobook while I do that and still absorb a lot of the content. I just didn't have that time this week. So I think I'm only about 25%, maybe a little higher, into Four Squares by Bobby Finger. But I really love this book so far. And I really hope that the next 75% of the audio doesn't just lose it for me, because this is fantastic. So it is set in two different timelines following a gay man named Artie in New York City. In 1992, it opens on his birthday when his close friends take him out to a Julius, which is a real bar in New York City. It is, I believe, the oldest gay bar in New York City, if not the United States, and was a site of some resistant, like, sip-ins and things like that before Stonewall even happened. And it is Artie's favorite bar to go and hang out in. So his friends take him to Julius, and he sees a man who's reading a book. And his friend Adam has slept with that man. But he goes over and he talks to the man, and the man is very rude to him. And then when he leaves the bar, the man followed him out, apologized, and it jumps to 2022. And Artie in 2022 is living alone. Oh, well, he was living alone in 1992, but you learn that in the 30 years in between that time, when we first met Artie, he had gotten into a very serious relationship with the man who was rude to him in the bar, and that man died. Again, not a spoiler. It's literally the premise of the book, and that happens. You find that out in like the first chapter, right at the beginning of the book. So it's about everything that happened in between as it moves back and forth in time. And it fleshes out how they got into their relationship and what his friend group was like in 1992. We haven't really found out what happens to the friend group at the point I met, but they are not in his life or don't appear to be in his life in 2022. So his lifeline has been Abraham is the man who was rude to him and who he gets into a relationship. But Abraham had been married and had a daughter. And the daughter in particular was Artie's only real social connection. And she has gotten married. She has gotten pregnant. They're moving to Seattle. So he doesn't really have anyone. And what I believe is going to happen is that the rest of the book in that timeline is going to be about him reaching out to community again and getting out into the world and rediscovering himself and his place in the world. And so far, it is a really beautiful book, and I'm really enjoying it. Let me say really one more time. Really. So I'm in the same place I was with, I put it down over there, where I was with Isaac Song, although I was much further along. I only had an hour left in the audio the last time we spoke in a Friday Reads video, and I have a lot left in this one. So there's a lot of room for things to go south. I've really only gone through the introduction at this point to getting to know all of the, key people and players, and there's a lot that could happen. There's a lot that could make this go south. I hope it doesn't, because the first quarter of this book is magical and I'm loving it. It's so good. Bobby Finger wrote a book called The Old Place, which I feel like I really want to look up and see if that's something I might want to read. I believe that's his only other book. Yeah, it's the only one listed on the back of the dust jacket. He is also co-host of the popular celebrity and entertainment podcast Who Weekly. And he's a native of Texas, but lives in Brooklyn. So there you go. Yeah, so he has another book, and I'm really feeling like this might be a book that I want to track down a copy of to have in my library. And I'm feeling like I might want to seek out The Old Place and read that, because I'm having that good of an experience with Foursquares. And I can't give you like a full-throated recommendation for this book since I'm only a quarter of the way into it, but I feel like I'm just loving it so much that I will be surprised if it takes a big downturn. So this is going to carry into February, and once I finish Grief is Love tonight, by goodness, I'm going to make it happen. I have 3 other library books, and I am trying to decide which one I might want to tackle first. 2 of them I have until the end of February, so I think I might prioritize the other one and at least start it and see what it is like. So those library books are Blue Light Hours by Bruna Dantas Lobato. Bruna Dantas Lobato is a translator, and I believe this is her first novel for herself. And it's very short, so I only have until February 9th to read this if I want to. Yeah, it's under 200 pages. It's 178 pages. And this will probably be the one that I pick up next, and then I'll, wade in a little bit and see if it's something that I want to commit to reading, because I give myself a little bit of leeway in the first 50 pages of a book to decide if it's something I want to read or not. So that is probably what I will do. And then I have Our Spoons Came from Woolworths by Barbara Comans, which I talked about last week, I think. And The Hills is Lonely by Lillian Beckwith. This had been in my hold list, and I looked at it again and realized that it is a memoir about a woman who moved to the Hebrides in Scotland let me see what year this was published. Copyright 1959. So it's an older book, but, we talked about how we have a pre-order on the Hebridean Baker's new cookbook coming out in February. And because of him, I am interested in learning more about the area. So this would be a really interesting book to try out. And there you go. So I'm probably going to try to get these done, or at least dip my toe in them. And, 2 of them are short. Our Spoons Came from Woolworths and Blue Light Hours. The Hills is Lonely is a little bit longer. But once I finish these, I feel like I need a bit of a break from library books. And that will be good because I think I have like 1 or 2 other books on hold. Or I have a hold on 1 or 2 other books, but I don't have them like to pick up. So hopefully those will take a while to get to me because I want to get back to my own books and see how that goes. But as I have said in recent videos, it is a good thing to support your local library or any library because their services are essential, very essential. So anyway, that is my Friday reads for this week. I would love to hear what you have been reading this week, what you've been watching or loving generally in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.